Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. And Cover One freelancer extraordinaire Kendall Mirsky is back with us tonight to talk interior offensive line prospects. You can find him on Twitter at Mirsky Kendall. Together, we are the BiIls guys. This show is presented by Picasso'sPizza.net. That's right. They got 4 great Western New York locations: Williamsville, West Seneca, Blaisdell, and Lancaster. You can call or visit Picasso'sPizza.net for old school delivery options, new school delivery options like DoorDash, depending on your distance. And if you're out of state or way out of Western New York, you can still get that great Buffalo style. I'm talking about that cup and char pepperoni from out of town, delivered frozen to your doorstep, again by going to Picasso'sPizza.net. They are the flagship sponsor of this program, as well as the Cover One Sports Network. And I'll tell you what, gentlemen, as we get things started this evening, first of all, holy crap, comment section's already like 35 deep. So
wait, I gotta bring this up. You know who just
kudos to you
joined
guys
us?
for being in here.
I don't know if you guys have seen this name since last draft season, but Hombre Lob is back.
Found us. He found us in the middle of our mock draft on Monday night.
Good to hear it.
So welcome.
The mock draft just roped him right back in.
He saw a mock draft on YouTube and he was like, wait a second, I'm gonna click on that. And then he found us again.
I want to know who his Tyler Shelvin is.
Yes. I think I asked him that like during the postseason this past year. I was like, we need to know who the next guy is.
Who is your Tyler Shelvin of this year's draft?
So I'll tell you what. Monday's show was crazy, right? All owners meeting, all this new news coming in. There was the Ryan Bates signing. There was the stadium news, like all this jam-packed stuff on Monday, which was great because we were talking about tackles and tight ends. But today it's like crickets in terms of at least the BiIls world, right? Obviously the NFL being the NFL, Bruce Arians just decides he's going to retire and Todd Bowles is going to take over there in Tampa Bay. So the NFL keeps on going crazy. But in terms of BiIls news, I think this is like the first time we've like started a show and like there's just no new news on the ticker. Like there's nothing, like no new news to report on the BiIls front on the ticker. So since there's no new news to report, before we get into interior offensive line prospects, let's just make up some news. Let's go TMZ style here on the Air Raid Hour, because there was a couple of very TMZ-like stories floating around social media today. So let's have a little fun with it. Let's start off with Von Miller posted on Instagram today that he was golfing with none other than free agent cornerback Joe Haden. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills have a need at CB2. Patrick Peterson just announced that he's going back to the Vikings. So, you know, as the days and weeks go by, some of these cornerbacks are starting to come off the board. There's still a decent chunk of cornerbacks out there, Joe Haden being one of them. So let's play a little bit of buy or sell here. And Dave, I'm going to start with you. Buy or sell? Joe Haden at some point this offseason will be a Buffalo Bill.
I'll bite. I'll bite. I just feel like there's a lot of smoke around Joe Haden and the Bills right now. Yeah, that's funny. But here's the thing with the way free agency is shaken out is that we saw being attack early positions that weren't as deep, right? Interior defensive line. There's some nice guys there in that sort of above average to top end range. We obviously know about the Von Miller at edge, right? There wasn't a ton of deep sort of top end edge players and really not a lot of mid-range edge players at all in free agency. So corner is one position you look at and there's like 50 guys, right? That you could say like this guy could come in and be a stopgap CB2 for this team that you'd feel comfortable either before the draft or after the draft with one of these 50 guys, right? Like you can make that decision. You don't have to make the decision before the draft. You can make that decision after the draft if you want to. So I'll buy. I think Joe Haden, there's been a lot of smoke around him in his connection to the Bills. Von Miller, obviously, golfing with him. But from a fit standpoint, he's a fit too, schematically, right? I feel like for what the Bills try to do on defense with that zone sort of cover two, really kind of heavy on that, I feel like Haden would be a fit. So I'll buy.
Yeah, some other free agent corners on the market: Trey Waynes, Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan, Jason Verrett, Xavier Rhodes, AJ Bouye, Steven Nelson, PJ Williams, TJ Carey, Mackenzie Alexander, Fabian Moreau, Desmond Trufant, Robert Alford, and for some reason I put on this list Greg Maben. I think it's because he used to be a Buffalo Bill at one point. Kendall, buy or sell? Joe Haden will be a Buffalo Bill.
For the sake of playing devil's advocate, I'm just going to say sell, even though there's just so much smoke around it. I'm going to say sell mostly with like the idea that there's just so many guys out there. I feel like the Bills are just going to play this game, this waiting game, because obviously we've heard the rumors on this thing, or, you know, Stephon Diggs liking tweets and now he's golfing with Von Miller. This all started like probably 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Like we've been linked to him for a while now and nothing's happened. So it's probably a money thing at the end of the day. I mean, especially considering all the moves that we've made and how it seems that there's no money left in the banana stand, but there somehow is. So I'm just gonna
today for,
right. So I'm just gonna say sell, because I think the Bills are just gonna wait to find whoever that bargain bin guy is, and at this point, they just need a body, a veteran body who can play the position. I'm not convinced Joe Haden's a better option than Steven Nelson, or Steven Nelson's a better option
I like
than
Bouye
Bryce
still,
Callahan,
personally.
or Bouye, or Xavier Rhodes. Like, all of these guys are in a very similar bucket.
Here's the thing. I'll say buy with the added qualifier that it will be after the draft, if anything, because
I like that.
There are, like Kendall said, like I've said, like you said, see, there are so many bodies that, like, why would the Bills don't need to make a move before the draft? Like, see how the draft
if a ton
out.
of them get signed, something could change. You know, if teams for whatever reason are like, oh, we got to bring in bodies. Next thing you know, there's like 4 of those guys we just mentioned are gone. Then they might be pushed in that direction. Maybe.
But if the Bills draft a corner in the 1st or 2nd round, that idea probably goes a little by the wayside. If they wait and they take a late round corner, or for some reason they don't even draft a corner, I think that idea gets more legs that you bring in a veteran.
And Kendall, you made this comment on social media today. You're like, hey, just to play devil's advocate, if the Buffalo Bills do sign a cornerback, it's because Brandon Beane has this draft philosophy where he wants to be able to take BPA in every round. He wants every position to theoretically be filled so he doesn't have to reach for any type of player. But at the same time, if you're trying to sell AJ Bouye, you're trying to sell Bryce Callahan, you're trying to sell Steven Nelson, they're going to want to be told that they're going to be the starting CB2. And I don't think the Buffalo Bills can guarantee that right now, because I think the Buffalo Bills might prefer to draft their CB1 or their CB2. So if you're the Buffalo Bills right now, you might be like, hey, we're offering you $3.5 million. We're offering you a chance to compete for the CB2 role. And the free agents are probably like, well, I'd like more like 5 or 6, and I'd like a chance to, I'd like to be told I'm like the CB2. Bills are probably just like, hey, we can't do that. But the draft comes and goes. The board doesn't fall the way the Bills want. They don't grab a corner in the first 2 rounds or one they feel comfortable starting. Then all of a sudden you pick up the phone to Joe Haden or, Bryce Callahan or AJ Bouye or Steven Nelson, go, all right, how about $5 million? And I'll tell you're going to be the front runner. And you can pretty much see on our depth chart, you're going to be the front runner to be the starting CB2. And that might be just a little bit more enticing. I'm sure all of these guys would sign with the Buffalo Bills.
Right.
I'm sure Patrick Peterson would have signed with the Buffalo Bills if the Buffalo Bills would have been convincing enough. But I don't think the Buffalo Bills are putting their best offer out there right now, just because I think they want to see how the draft goes.
I think the Bills' attitude towards this position really it should hammer home for everyone in the fan base how confident this entire organization is with Dane Jackson. Like, this is 2 years now where we're like, okay, we've got to make a FA signing and we got to have a premium draft pick at the position. Last year, it was bringing back Levi, and then it was Rashad Wildgoose and Nick McLeod. And now it's like we haven't even seen an FA signing with Trey White injured. And I mean, we could all get our hearts broken again with CB being drafted like past.
This is the hottest take of all time. And it's never going to happen. But if we did get into a situation where like the Buffalo Bills didn't like PUP Trey White, they just like, they were just like, yeah, he'll be back like week 3 or 4. He still needs another month, etc. And our starting corners on day one of the season were Dane Jackson and Nick McLeod with Cam Lewis as the reserve coming off the bench, I wouldn't lose my mind because I feel confident we've improved. Don't get me wrong. It's not ideal. It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not
but
perfect.
You wouldn't lose your mind. I think that's
I
a
wouldn't
fair
lose-
way to put
I
it.
wouldn't lose. I'd be like, yeah, maybe we can get by a month with it. Like,
I mean,
I'd be
they
like,
brought
especially
Nick
with the way
McLeod back.
the way we've improved, up front. You know, so the way Sean McDermott, like, people forget we made the playoffs in 2017, and like, how many different CB2s did we have that year? We were playing like Ryan Lewis at CB2 at some point. Like, there was a whole bunch of guys bumping into that CB2 spot that first year. We ended up making the playoffs, and that defense was not as good as the defensive front that we have not. So
it so much depends on Trey White, though, right? If he's
A lot of
back
it
and at 100%, and he's essentially alleviating you from the stress of worrying about that side of the field, or that side of the roster, right, if you will, as a CB1, the CB2 becomes a little bit more palatable to be a revolving door, if you will, of Dane Jackson or whoever you want it to be. And that we've seen the Bills do that, right? With Josh Norman, we've seen them do that with EJ Gaines, and like Levi Wallace just kept kind of coming back, ended up starting like over 40 games for the Bills. So it's like, who you don't have Levi Wallace now this year to kind of fall back on as like the vet that competes with a young guy like a Dane Jackson. It's literally Dane Jackson and Nick McLeod. And you have this cloud, no pun intended, hanging over your head around Trey White's availability for week one. So it seems to be that, I'll say this, I'd be very, very surprised at that scenario, Steve, but I also probably would be, if that scenario did happen, it's likely because Trey White's only going to miss a game or two at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, Jessica says, how bad was Trey White's tear? We have no idea.
Evan Johnson, good one. Renman, that's another good one.
We've got absolutely no idea how bad the tear was. The Bills keep a pretty tight lid on those type of things. You know, Trey White hasn't like taken to social media to make any sort of like pronouncements or anything like that. So it's all been quiet on that front. The only thing that we can be hopeful about right now is, I mentioned this on the last show at the owners meeting. They were interviewing Sean McDermott, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on at cornerback?" And the first words out of his mouth were, "Don't forget about Trey White." Like, it wasn't like, "Hey, how's Trey White doing?"
Okay.
It was straight up. The first thing he said was, "Hey, don't forget we got Trey White back there." Like,
hey, what Brandon Beane said in his latest presser, I think he was like, whatever date, when he was asked about Trey White, whatever date that the doctors give Trey White, he's gonna try his damnedest to beat it. And that's just the kind of guy he is. So I think to the fan base, that's encouraging. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't really give us a timetable or anything like that, but it's a good coach speak type of answer that could, you know, get a rise out of the fan base. I'm a little bit more confident hearing that.
All right. Second piece of information that we're sort of just spewing out loud, even though it probably has no merit. There was a tweet today. I didn't think this person was real at first, at Zig Frukasi, who is a Sirius XM NFL satellite radio host. So he is technically an NFL insider. He's got a pretty decent following on social media, hosts a Sirius XM NFL show. This was his tweet today. The Buzzards are telling me the Bills may be aggressive in trying to move up in the NFL draft and may move a veteran or two in the process. So Dave, buy or sell? The Buffalo Bills trade a veteran player on the roster in order to move up in the 2022 NFL draft.
So we're going to trade Matt Hack to get an extra 7th round pick or something.
That's the thing about the tweet too. Like, at first I'm like, man,
Really
what veteran player? Like, obviously the number one player that comes to mind is Tremaine Edmonds. The New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles have multiple picks before us. Both have a need at linebacker. Joe Shane has that connection to the Buffalo Bills front office. Tremaine Edmonds, what was that kid at the draft combine who's got the Philadelphia Eagles podcast? Draft a damn linebacker, Howie. Well, how about you trade for one? Like, that might. So obviously the Philadelphia Eagles have historically had a hole at linebacker. So
I'll say this:
buy or sell, because I thought it was a first round, but it could be any round. It didn't really specify the round. Do you think the Buffalo Bills trade up this year using a veteran player?
I think it's possible that they package a pick maybe in a veteran player to move up somewhere, but I would be very surprised if it was in the first round. Because if it is in the first round, it probably would be Tremaine Edmonds, right? I mean, there's not really anyone else of value on the Bills that a team's going to jump at to give up a first round pick. Tremaine Edmonds' contract makes him easy to trade. He is still viewed by many across the league and analysts, whatever, beat reporters as a upper echelon, high ceiling talent. The thing is, if you're the Bills, like, you're not going to do that unless you have a fail safe in place, right? Like, you're not going to make that move unless it's guaranteed that you're going to either get a guy that you absolutely want to get in the draft to replace him, or you have some other plan. Because, right, AJ Klein's gone. If you trade Tremaine Edmonds, you're basically left with Matt Milano, Andre Smith, right? Like, these types on the roster, Tyrell Dodson. Like, are you willing to go into the season, a Super Bowl run type season, without the Mike linebacker, right? That's been important to this defense for years and years, even before McDermott was with the Bills. The only way I see that happening is if there's a guy on the board and that's the guy the Bills want, and it's a guarantee that they get him, they will pull the trigger maybe on draft day to do so. We all know, right, the situation with Bradley Chubb and the Broncos from years back, where like there was a trade in place to potentially move up with them. John Elway said, if our guy's not there, we'll make the trade with you. His guy was there. He didn't make the trade. Yeah. I think the reverse would be true in this situation. If the Bills guy is there in a chance for them to trade up, they will make the trade. If he's not, they're not going to do it, right? So Bean won't do this unless he has like a contingency in place, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, I see Daniel Gowry's coming in saying,
but what value do those guys have? That's the problem.
Here's what I'm going to say. And this, I wince to say it because we invested so much in those guys, right? A second round pick and a third round pick. We're sitting there in the third round and we haven't taken a running back yet. And we want to take a running back. We want to move up to the top of the third round to take a running back. Our third round pick plus Zach Moss to move up 15 spots. Like, could you use a Zach Moss to move up 15 spots in a round? Not maybe the first or the second round, but the third round, the fourth round, the fifth round. Could you utilize him?
Fifth, maybe.
Yeah, a guy like, it's just,
I don't think
it stings, but I agree with Dave.
You're not. He was a third rounder. You're definitely not going to get equal value of that. So best case scenario, you're getting fourth round. And I don't even think he's worth that. I mean, literally, I have to agree by chance. Like, it's a day 3 pick plus your pick, or it's Moss plus your pick to move up somewhere in day 3. That's to me where Moss is.
And to me,
you're not going to get much.
That would be like after we draft a running back. Like, the Buffalo Bills in the second round select, fill in the running back. I'm not going to say the name of the running back because some people in the comment sections who are Breece Hall fans will yell at me, and some people who are Kenneth Walker fans will yell at me. The Bills select X running back in the second round of the draft. I won't even say the first round before anyone loses their damn minds. The Bills take a running back in the second round. All right, now all of a sudden it's the draft pick. It's Devin Singletary. It's Zach Moss. It's Duke Johnson. All of a sudden it's a little bit of a crowded room. Then you would, in like the 5th or the 6th round, start to float a guy like Zach Moss. I mean, if you go out and get your bona fide, right? Like, say the Bills make that move, like, boom, the Bills take Breece Hall at 25. All of a sudden, Devin Singletary maybe becomes a trade chip. He's a pending UDFA. So even he is someone who eventually, like, if a certain move happens, a guy like Devin Singletary could possibly become a trade chip. I don't know. Kendall, buy or sell, the Buffalo Bills trade a veteran player to move up on draft day?
I buy the idea that Edmonds has value and that it makes sense in all of the salary cap meaning and everything that Dave said about like the contingency plan. Like, if it comes to that and there's a plan set and you can see, all right, I don't even want to put Nakobe Dean on this list because I don't know if he fits the archetype. He's not even 6 feet tall, but like, say Devin Lloyd
I think be Lloyd or Muma.
Yeah, say Devin Lloyd slips in the first round, because like, you're not trading up in the second. You're not using Edmonds to trade up in the second round. I feel like that doesn't make sense for the Bills.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
If you're moving up in the first round, you really like Devin Lloyd, who Eric is crushing on right now on Twitter, if you guys want to check it out.
Because he's good.
Because he's good.
He's awesome.
If
he
the
looks
Bills
like Fred
really,
Warner out there, man. He's shades of Fred Warner.
If the Bills really like him and he's sliding and he like drops past the Patriots at 21,
I think that's where he goes. I think that's where he goes.
Exactly. Or they want to leapfrog the Patriots at 21. Like, I can understand that. Like, I'm not gonna I'm not going to buy it because there's potential for that happening, because the whole tweet was so open-ended and filled with maybe. I'm hearing from buzzards they may move up in this round, and it may be a veteran, and it might happen.
But isn't that a net loss for this team who's in a Super Bowl window?
And
by,
that's
like,
the
giving
big
up
thing.
capital to
We're
get
in a
a
year
replacement?
we're in a year right now where we can win, and you want to restart debatably the most important part of this defense. Whatever your opinions are on Tremaine Edmunds, the player, the position is extremely important, and restarting that in a year that you're planning your Super Bowl odds favorites in Las Vegas, it's a very bold strategy. But I do understand the salary cap perspective, where this team could benefit a lot from restarting on a rookie deal at that position. So I don't want to completely sell the idea, but I don't want to buy into it because it's so open-ended, and it could literally mean we're trading Epinesa to move up in the 3rd or the 4th round, or we're packaging Ford and X to move up in mid round. Like, that to me makes a lot more sense in terms of value and not giving up too much for your Super Bowl window, stuff like that. So the Edmunds stuff, like, there is some smoke there. I don't want to completely discount that, but it's a lot. It's a lot to expect this team to do that with the heavy splash they already made with Von Miller. But who knows? Maybe that's the reason they have to deal Edmunds, because of all the money on the books now.
All right. So before we get into our interior offensive line talk for this evening, just a couple of other bits of news here. Some number changes. Taron Johnson possibly moving to the number 7. I hate it.
I don't like it. I don't like it either.
Jaquan Johnson moving to number 4.
I love this.
I like the 4.
love it.
I like Jaquan. Jaquan has always pissed me off. What was that number?
46.
46.
What
Oh, I
is it?
hated
46?
it.
46, yeah.
Duke Johnson with 22. I don't know if I'm vibing with that. I like Duke Johnson. I don't know if I like Duke Johnson at 22, but that was his number, right, at the U. Jamison Crowder 80, Greg Manx 62, and Tim Settle 99 have all like sort of been leaked.
Jamison Crowder 80 is so
he's so weird. It's just so weird.
Was he 82 with the Jets or something?
Yeah, something like that. He's old school, man.
I like him. Duke guy down the
school.
Street from me here.
Taron Johnson wearing 7 is 6 as David.
I like this single digits on defense. I don't know why. I
don't like it. I don't like it.
I kind of like. I mean, some of them can pull it off. Like, I mean, I guess Tyrann Mathieu, he wears 7, right? He pulls it off. Buda Baker pulls off 6.
I don't know about that.
Well.
I thought Tyrann Mathieu was 32.
I thought he changed it in Kansas.
I feel like he might have.
I could also just be straight imagining things.
So much happened last year. I don't think Buda Baker's number 6 either, but I think
Buda Baker is totally.
I think he's 3.
How about playoff Lenny as a running back with a single digit? What do you think about running backs with single digit?
I don't know. Oh, but yeah, Buda Baker's 3. My bad.
Tyrann Mathieu's 32. I don't think he was ever single.
I don't know. Oh, because he wore 7 at LSU.
That's what yeah.
There we go. Byron Murphy wears 7 too, I believe. So
yeah, he does.
I don't like it, guys. I'm not a fan.
Yeah,
I like it, and I like it on.
It's gonna take some getting used to.
Oh yeah,
James Conner.
Jalen Ramsey at 5 is pretty solid. I will agree with that. I think
you guys are weird. You're drawing weird lines on this. It depends on the player for him.
It does.
On the player. It
100% does.
So if Taron reaches all pro status, does no one care?
No, I don't care because he's wearing 7. It's stupid.
So it's the number. What about Cristiano Ronaldo? Is he allowed to wear 7?
I was such an Isaiah Hodgins stan. Like, he pulled off 17 so well in college. I think he was wearing 83 for a little bit, looked good, and then he switched to 16. I was like, fuck that. I'm off.
I like 17 a lot. You guys are weird though, drawing your weird lines in the sand with this.
I don't like 40 on Von Miller either, but I'll accept it because he's just fine.
I actually also don't like that so much either.
Do we even have a 58 on our
Matt
Milano?
Oh yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah. How dare you? How are they doing a Bills podcast? I don't even know their players.
I don't know. I don't mind 40 on Von Miller. Wasn't he 40 with the Rams?
Yeah, he was, but I don't know why. I also didn't vibe with that change. I don't know. Whatever.
Last thing before we get to the main topic today, I need you guys to fill in the blanks for me because obviously I don't even know players' jersey numbers, so I'm losing my mind here. It's been so long since they've done the pre-draft visits, right? So I remember being glued. Like Ryan Talbot always does a great job. Forcing myself to go to the Walter football website, even though I'm pretty sure it gave my computer 99 viruses, just trying to check to see who is visiting the Buffalo, who has had a pre-draft visit with the Buffalo Bills. Because like Devin Singletary, pre-draft visit, Dawson Knox, pre-draft visit, like it was a pretty solid indicator. The Buffalo Bills didn't really hide their intentions of who they were interested in when they brought them in for pre-draft visits. Pre-draft visits are back this year. I've only seen one reported, and we're a month away from the draft. We are 30 days away, exactly 30 days away. And the only pre-draft visit I've seen reported is Nicholas Petit Frere. Am I losing my mind, or do they come later? Like we still got to get through pro days, I guess, maybe. I could have sworn pre-draft visits would have started already.
I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
remember. I remember writing a lot about it though, like last year and the year before. Obviously, I was following Justin M on TDN. I had his
Yeah.
notifications sparked up. Like I would get a push notification every time he tweeted, which was annoying.
He does a
'cause
great
he's
job
Titans
with the
fan.
combine stuff and stuff too, because he just interviews all the players. So
Exactly.
he asks them
Yeah,
straight up.
he gets a lot of good information on that type of stuff.
Mhm.
I would
But
imagine in the next couple weeks you'll see more, right? Like Bean was
Yeah.
probably so laser focused on this first wave of free agency and getting that sort of done.
Mhm.
I bet now that things have kind of come down a bit, they're
And-
happening probably
and
as we speak.
John says, I bet they're ongoing. So we might just need to put Bradley Gelber on this, because I know at least on a couple of occasions, players sort of just gave it away themselves because they were Instagram storying and Snapchatting.
Mhm.
And I guess TikTok didn't exist back then, but I'm sure nowadays they'd be TikToking their visits to the Buffalo Bills Stadium and the gym and all those different, the field, etc. Like there were a number of players who pretty much outed themselves as a pre-draft visitor by posting it all over social media. So they could be ongoing and the Bills are keeping it quiet. Let's hope maybe the players start, outing themselves and leaking it over the next few weeks, because it's just great fun. Like I've got the tracker started in the offseason spreadsheet and it's got one name on it. And that name is Nicholas Petit Frere, who we talked about on Monday, and honestly transitions perfectly into what we're talking about today. Because today we are going to be breaking down our interior offensive line draft board.
Yep.
And obviously Nicholas Petit Frere is an offensive tackle. We talked about him on the offensive tackle show on Monday, but the Buffalo Bills could take an offensive lineman in the first 4 rounds of the draft, and it could be an offensive tackle. And people might raise their eyebrows like, why are we taking a tackle? We got Spencer Brown. We got, we got Deion Dawkins. We just drafted Tommy Doyle in the 5th round. But that tackle could obviously have guard flexibility as well. So it's important to note that thing. So the first thing I think we should do is take a look at the Buffalo Bills depth chart along the offensive line. True tackles are Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, and Tommy Doyle. I guess you could probably throw Cody Ford in there as a guy who maybe shifts back to like right tackle if the Buffalo Bills don't address offensive tackle in the draft or in the UDFA process or in the free agency process. But I mean, they look like they need at least 3-4 tackles to even to get to training camp. So the Bills are pretty sparse there. Along the interior, you got Mitch Morse, Rodger Saffold, Ryan Bates. That's your projected center, left guard, and right guard. Then you have Cody Ford, Ike Butker, who signed a 1-year deal to come back to the Buffalo Bills, but he is coming off a torn Achilles. It's looking like he'll probably be pupped to start the year and be available mid-season as a reserve. You got guard center flex, Greg Manx, and then the person that every week someone says, who the hell is that guy? Jacob Capra, closing out the Buffalo Bills depth chart. So looking at this first, just assessing the needs, gentlemen. Dave, what do you think? If you're the Buffalo Bills, finger quotes need, what's the need here?
I think the need is probably for a possible mid-round tackle who has maybe some inside flex, right? Maybe a guard tackle flex, or maybe as by chance put a Zach Tom, maybe who has 3-way flex, tackle, guard, and center flex. I think that you go into this thing looking at your depth chart, obviously realizing that you have more bodies on the interior than you do at tackle right now, but you still have question marks on the interior long term. What's Cody Ford? He's probably going to be gone. Rodger Saffold here 1 year. I know we got Rick Bates back, but like if the Bills don't invest in a true interior offensive lineman early, I'd like to see them go after a guy who has tackle, guard, flex, and maybe as a guy who played a significant amount of time at tackle in college, but who projects maybe as someone who could slide inside at the next level,
Mhm.
but could play and open, your roster as your fourth tackle, open on your roster as your fourth tackle, right? So I'm okay with that, but I'm also okay if the Bills really want to go with someone who's really a true tackle, right? Who can be a swing tackle. So I think for me, it's someone who can be tackle, guard, flex, or someone who really could be a tackle on both sides, right? A swing tackle,
Mhm.
left or right side. That'd be kind of what I'm looking for. I do think it's a position of need still, even after drafting 2 guys last year, because we're one injury away from Tommy Doyle having meaningful snaps on this line. And while that may be okay, right? The Bills may feel confident that in year 2, Tommy Doyle can be their swing tackle. You've got no one behind him at
Mhm.
that point. So one way or another, bodies are going to be added to this group before training camp.
Yeah. The thing is, someone had mentioned in the comment section, like, I think we need to draft 2. I still think that holds true. I would love, depending on what kind of trades, like if we make a move, a significant move to trade up and go get a guy and we have to give up some draft capital to do it. Okay. But if like we stick with like 8 picks, I
Mm-hmm.
would love 2 guys. And I think one of them would ideally have tackle guard flex and the other would have guard center flex. Then you
Yep.
got like every position along the offensive line sort of covered there. Kendall, what do you think in terms of the Buffalo Bills offensive line needs? Rodger Saffold is a UFA after this year, which is another thing I think to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, I'm personally on the train of find someone who has guard tackle flex. That's kind of the bigger one for me because I don't know if I want to have to use 2 draft picks, one that has, specialty at tackle and the other that has specialty at guard or anywhere on the interior that is.
Mhm.
I'd like to find a way to be efficient with that roster spacing. So I mean, there's so many guys here. There's Kenyon Green, Sean Ryan, Tyler Smith,
Whoa.
Jimmy
We'll
Sailor.
get
Like,
there.
there's so
We will
many
get
guys
there.
that have that
You're
flexibility.
just peeking all the names before we even get started.
Hey,
Just
people
giving it
know the
away for
names,
free.
man.
Just giving
Everyone
it away
has
for
these
free.
lists online. No, they're free everywhere. No, but the point the point is here is that, like you said, Saffold's a free agent after this year.
Mm.
And even beyond that, as great as Ryan Bates was this year, it was such a small sample size. I don't want to hand him that job. I think a lot of people have taken interior offensive linemen off the table in round 1, and I'm
I
not
haven't.
fully ready to do that
Mhm.
yet. I
It
think
depends on
it's
who's there.
I
Yep.
think it's reasonable to say it fell down the priority list, but like if Kenyon Green is there and you don't like the other guys, I'm not taking that out of consideration. Um it's just he's someone that he strikes that guard tackle flex and
Mhm.
he can do both of those things and he can push Ryan Bates to earn that job this year. And even if Bates wins the job this year,
Mhm.
then you have someone to step in for Saffold next year.
Yep.
So and even like by chance comes in and he says he has low expectations for Saffold. So even then, if you draft an
Mhm.
interior offensive lineman in the first round, then if Saffold doesn't do great, then you have someone there and Saffold becomes your backup. So
Mhm.
either way, I don't think we should be taking interior offensive linemen off the table for round 1. I
Yeah.
definitely agree bringing Ryan Bates back certainly bumped it down the list of priorities. But yeah, I'm on the guard tackle flex train. I think that kills 2 birds with 1
Mhm.
stone.
Before we get to actual players and start walking through the draft board and talking
Sorry.
about no, you're good. You're good. Before we start talking about like, hey, what player, like in what round is the best value, who's the best fit in each round, et cetera, sort of working our way through the draft board. I want to talk a little bit about like, obviously, I think a little bit of this is overrated because other than our man Casey Reed, I think a lot of people last year were like, Gregory Rousseau, really? Like, what the like where like kind of like sometimes picks just come out of left field, and the guys that you don't expect the Buffalo Bills to be interested in, they are thoroughly interested in. So there is something to be said about like we don't know jack shit about what's going on behind the scenes, but there is also like games where you can sort of connect the dots and you can sort of after the fact, Gregory Rousseau. Oh, his defensive or his head coach was Manny Diaz, who was close friends with Sean McDermott, et cetera, et cetera. The Bills were able to do more background information on Gregory Rousseau during a pandemic than maybe some other players. So the connections sort of came out after the draft, how that sort of worked out. I want to look at some of the connections and, Eric Turner at Cover One, he's been doing a great job. he's done a real deep dive into Aaron Kromer again. Watching the film, reading up on him, watching some of his old like coaching seminars, looking up some of his connections. So just a couple of connections to keep an eye out for as we head into this conversation. Aaron Kromer has a relationship with Liam Cohen, the former offensive coordinator at Kentucky, who's now with the LA Rams, where Aaron Kromer used to be. So Darian Kennard and Luke Fortner are both guys that you should probably keep an eye on if you're Bills fans. And the other is apparently he really likes Iowa. He likes those tacticians. He likes the way Kirk Ferentz and co coached them up at the University of Iowa. So obviously a guy like Tyler Linderbaum, if he drops to 25, Buffalo Bills could seriously be tempted by
God, if he dropped to
a
25,
guy like Tyler
I would have
Linderbaum.
no hesitation picking.
Yeah, I'd have no
Linderbaum.
problem with it.
So Kendall, other than connections, I want to go to you and I want to talk a little bit about like archetypes, because I know you've been looking into that a little bit. Sort of like in layman's terms, it seems like looking through some old depth charts that Aaron Kromer of teams coached by Aaron Kromer kind of likes guys with like guard, tackle, flex. I know Edwards, the left guard in the Rams, was a college tackle. Joseph Noteboom is a guy who had that guard, tackle, flex that now got that big money to replace Andrew Whitworth. So like tackle, guard, flex seems to be important to Aaron Kromer. I think guard, center, flex is also really important. You look at guys they've had over the years like Brian Allen, Austin Blythe, some of the other guys that they've had on the interior there as well. Long arms seems to be a thing. Apparently that might've been one of the hesitations with Ryan Bates, was he had shorter arms. And even if they don't need to play all the positions, Eric was telling us how Aaron Kromer really likes his guys to know all of the positions, and he'll put them at positions that they're not even going to play just so they get comfortable with those positions. So they really know what other guys on the field are dealing with. So if you're playing left guard, you play better at left guard if you know what the left tackle is supposed to be doing, and you know what the center is supposed to be doing. So I think a lot of guys who played multiple positions in college could also be something that's intriguing to the Buffalo Bills. I know that sounds very bland and generic: tackle, guard, flex, guard, center, flex, zone capable, long arms, multiple positions. But at the end of the day, like there are some guys who are very rigid. Like this guy can only be a right guard. This guy can only be a left tackle. This guy can only be a right tackle. So some of those guys, maybe we can start scratching them off the list, unless they're, he's going to be an elite right tackle, or, he's going to be an elite left guard. So maybe there are a few guys here or there we can start scratching off the list. But what are the Bills archetypes that you have sort of for the offensive line position?
Well, I guess I'll start with that arm length bit. Last year, Jack Anderson, this is all Brandon Beane data. Yeah. Jack Anderson was actually the shortest arm length since his time, Brandon Beane's time in Carolina. So Jack Anderson last year was the shortest arm length of anyone they've brought in free agency or draft wise. Second shortest is Ryan Bates. So yeah, you're not far off in saying that. Height and weight wise, the average is around 6'4", and the minimum is 6'2" and like 3/4, something like that. And that was Trey Turner. So
is this just guards, Kendall? Or
this is just guards. I did not include centers in this. Centers is separate. We don't have enough data to really give good, accurate stuff on centers, since there's really only like 2 on a roster sometimes. But yeah, the big thing is like height and weight. That minimum is 6'2" and some change. And then the lightest guy they brought in is 306. And there's a lot of guys that we're going to talk about tonight that don't even meet 300. So, and the biggest wrench that you throw into this too is this is Brandon Beane data. We don't know, like I don't have Aaron Kromer data in here. And that could really throw a wrench into what these true archetypes are, because this is what Brandon Beane is looking for. Yeah. But so far, what we've seen this offseason is Aaron Kromer has a real hand on what's going on in this offensive line room. So I really do wonder how much this changes. I'm trying to look for any outliers here, anything specifically in terms of measurements, but I think I hit most of it.
And some of the things too is like some of these guys in this draft, like I'm going to use Luke Fortner, for example, because I really like Luke Fortner, 6'4", 305. You're like, oh man, that's really kind of light. But Ryan Bates, when he was drafted, was 6'4", 305. Exactly. And within 3 years, he was 335 pounds, or at least that's what Josh Allen said in an interview. He was 335 pounds. So even if he's not exactly 335, he's probably somewhere 325 plus or 320 plus. So Ryan Bates has put on 15, 20 pounds in the 3 years he's gotten here. So top of the draft, like if there's like a guy in like the first 2 or 3 rounds, that's like 305. I think maybe the Buffalo Bills will be like, that's kind of guy we want to play right away. But if there's a guy in the 6th or 7th round that they know they're going to take some time to develop and they're sort of going to incubate them at the bottom half of the depth chart, like they have with some of these other guys like Ike Bodker and Ryan Bates for a couple of years, I don't think they'd hesitate to pull the trigger on a 300, 305 pound guy, knowing they can get them into that NFL weight room.
I mean, Bates, according to Wikipedia and Pro Football Reference, is listed at 302. So it's like, I mean, even
that's not even accurate. I think after they're drafted, you stop getting an accurate. You stop getting an accurate weight on these guys.
And even what they test in at the combine isn't necessarily accurate because some guys are shedding weight just so they run faster.
And look at Majai Sanders, who like added 15 pounds between.
Well, let's see what the official Buffalo Bills website lists Ryan Bates at.
We do have a super chat here from AX and Jax N222. So thank you, Ajax. We super appreciate or X in Jax.
302.
Yeah, we really appreciate the super chat. Throw in a comment, man, and we're always happy to put that comment up. So yeah, he's listed at 302 on the website. I just think they get super lazy after they're drafted, and it's just like, well, they're drafted. Who cares anymore? Because I think like the last official weight you really get from a guy, I think you just put their pro day weight up there, right? Like if a guy weighs in at a pro day at something, I think the pro day weight. So that should be super, super interesting. All right. So let's get to the board now and let's start talking about players the Buffalo Bills have the possibility of drafting. And we're going to start in the first round. Again, these are projections. So this is me sort of going to various different websites like the Draft Network, Pro Football Network. I sort of avoid PFF just because they do their own thing and they don't give a shit when anyone cares. They just put their own grades up. They don't really do a projection board. So I go based on the TDN projection board, PFN, things I hear from insiders on Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. What I like to say is I don't know people, but I know people who know people. So I can sort of ask them around where guys are going to go in the draft. So here is how I'm vibing the first round of the draft. I'm feeling pretty confident that by pick 32, both Zion Johnson and Tyler Linderbaum will have their names called in this draft. And the one wild card who is a first round, possibly early second round pick is Kenyon Green from Texas A&M. So, Dave, I'm going to start with you. Zion Johnson, Tyler Linderbaum, you're on the board at 25. Are those two guys options for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Linderbaum is likely gone well before pick 25. He's the premier center in the draft. He was the number 1 rated center per PFF of all centers in college football last year, and is their highest rated center they've ever graded since starting college. I don't know, that's just one thing, but like Tyler Linderbaum to me is like, he is the Bradbury of this draft, right? He is the guy that's going to go in the middle of the first round. And I don't know exactly what team that's going to be. I haven't looked to see specifically what team needs a center, but I would be shocked if he's there at 25. Zion Johnson to me should be very much in play at 25 if he's available. You don't know, like Rodger Saffold's here for 1 year. You could potentially have your entire starting 5 offensive line locked up for the next 2 years after 2022 and not have to think twice about it if you draft a guy like Zion Johnson at pick 25. Because then left to right, and even if you wanted to move Ryan Bates back to left guard, which you would have that option to do, you'd have some combination of Dawkins, Johnson, Morse, Bates, and Spencer Brown, and potentially a long-term option at center with Zion Johnson, depending on how they want to develop him there once the Mitch Morse era ends. Yeah. So he is very much in play in my mind, should not be taken off the board just because Bates is back. And if you're talking about one of the most well-rounded, as close to a sure thing at that position as you can get, it's Zion Johnson. And he tested well athletically, by the way. So he is a high RAS guy as well. So he's checking a lot of boxes for me right now.
Yeah, Zion, the projection at center is not great, but I know he was doing it at the Senior Bowl. But you like as you mentioned, like that's the thing where he can come in here and he's got Mitch Morris. He's got 3 years of practice to work on it.
Mhm.
And
3
it doesn't
years of
even matter if he doesn't develop
preseason
into
snaps.
that.
Yeah,
If he's an
100%.
elite, if he's an elite
Uh-huh.
guard, who cares?
Oh yeah, he can play guard, and then when Mitch Morris does, when the Bills do decide to move on from Mitch Morris, he can just be part of the conversation. And they've
Right.
had 3 years to prepare him to be part of that conversation.
And if he's not the answer, no harm, no
Yeah,
foul.
Mitch
They have other options. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Jessica Tennis comes in and says Linderbaum is dropping like a rock. He was thought as a possible top 10 pick, a month or so ago. Here is why Tyler Linderbaum is dropping. Number one, center value. If your team doesn't need a center, you question whether Tyler Linderbaum can play guard. 6'2", so he's at the very low end of the height spectrum. 296 pounds, and that was him adding on some beef before he got to the combine. 31 and 1/8 inch arms. So despite the fact the man is an absolute freak and the film is the film, he is a mauler out there. Kendall, what do you think that the 6'2", the 296, the 31 inch arms, is that a red flag where if Tyler Linderbaum's on the board, you could see the Buffalo Bills passing?
I could see them passing for 2 reasons. Not necessarily the short arms thing. I've said this before. Short arms, it's not ideal. And let me double check his arm length, but I'm pretty sure his combination of arm length, height, and weight would make him the smallest on this archetype
Yeah,
list.
he's got 31 and 1/8 inch arms.
Yeah, and that's smaller than what that was smaller than Jack Anderson last year, who was at 31 and 3/4. So that's the thing. It would definitely make it tough. It would definitely give the Bills pause that the fact that he would literally be taking the cake for the minimums on all of these measurables for what Brandon Beane has drafted on the interior. But the film is the film, as TP comes in here saying, I mean, it didn't stop him.
And
I think
Iowa.
the biggest thing, and he's Iowa. That's another connection too. I want to add to that. Didn't Eric say that not only is it an Iowa connection, but he likes those like Big Ten type of blocking schools?
Yeah.
That's what Cromer likes or whatever.
And
But
the comp for Linderbaum too on NFL.com per Lance Zierlein, who I believe his father made his bones as an NFL offensive line coach, was Jason Kelce, which kind of fits, right?
yeah, it
like
makes sense to an extent,
Jason Kelce is definitely a guy where you don't look at him and go, man, look at that guy. That looks like a football player. So I think that's a good comp for him.
I think the biggest thing that would give the Bills pause is really, can he play guard? Because I've seen a lot of concerns about it. And personally, watching the tape, it's like, how could you possibly have a concern that this dude just bumps over one to the left or one to the right and he can't do similar type of things? It's a similar type of position. There's different responsibilities, especially in the pass game, but in the run game, there's not a ton that's different. You're still kind of combo blocking, feeding to the guy next to you, working up to the next level, all that kind of stuff. And he shows the technical ability where he could do it from any of those 3 interior spots. But I've seen it from a lot of experts that they're worried if he's just a true center and there's nothing else to his game. And for the Bills specifically, I could understand why that would give them pause, because it's like, we just extended Mitch Morris.
That would give him pause.
He's not even 30 years old.
Yeah.
So
if they didn't extend Morris, I think he'd be in play. I think that for that reason, it could take him off the board for the Bills, but I would still very strongly consider
I'm
it.
with you. I'm with you, Tilt.
All right. So we got our second round board here, and these are my first and second round prospects. Kenyon Green from Texas A&M makes a second appearance because I sort of have him as a fringe first rounder. It's interesting. TDN has him as the 12th best prospect. That's not their projection board. That's their personal rankings, ahead of Tyler Linderbaum
they like him.
and Zion Johnson. And there's a lot of reasons too, like a guy like Kenyon Green. You mentioned on a multitude of occasions while watching that Isaiah Spiller tape. Isaiah Spiller knows exactly who to run behind. When he's running there at Texas A&M, it's Kenyon Green. Some other bona fide second round prospects that I have are Sean Ryan from UCLA. Left tackle at UCLA, will be a left guard in the pros, and Jamari Salyer from Georgia. He had a good pro day, but again, what I heard from some scouts, Tony Pauline reported from his pro day, a little stiff. You could see it against some of the more upper echelon teams that he faced. Probably not going to be a tackle in the pros. So he'll probably shift into the other position that he played a ton at Georgia. and that is right guard. So those are sort of the three guys that I have those grades on. One of the things that I failed to mention here was sort of the averages. I go out and I do the 3-year averages.
Oh, yeah.
The 3-year average for offensive linemen taken in a draft, interior offensive linemen taken for a draft, is 22. The first round average is 2 players. So there's Linderbaum and there's Zion Johnson. The second round average is 3 players. So there's Kenyon Green, Jamari Salyer, and Sean Ryan. Obviously, things can change. Guys can fall in love with guys and reach for like what we might consider a third round guy, etc. But you can expect probably 5 or 6 guys off the board by the time you get to the third round. And these are the 5 I'm throwing out here in my projection. Kendall, I'm going to start with you here. Any of these sort of second round guys stick out to you? Is Kenyon Green a guy you're maybe willing to trade assets to move up in the second round to go get?
I don't know if he's someone I'd be willing to move up to go get. I like him and I liked his tape a lot, but I'm not sure if I would surrender assets to go get him. He's someone for me who's kind of a prime candidate of move back in the first round a little bit to go get. If you don't like the board where it sits and the teams behind you, you're pretty confident that they're going to be snagging wide receivers, but you don't want to take a wide receiver and there's a ton on the board. Then you move back 4 or 5 spots and you go get Kenyon Green and get some draft capital. That's kind of the position that I'm in with Kenyon Green. I'd be okay with it at 25, but I think I'd prefer it somewhere in the later 20s, earlier 30s. But yeah, moving up to go get him isn't something I'm super fond of. I don't want to give up. I mean, maybe I'm just a little sore from the Cody Ford trade up. And I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, he's got guard tackle flex. It's just going to be Cody Ford all over again.
Peace, Dalton Reisner.
So, but I do like his game. I like his game a lot. I think he will slip for the reason that he just didn't test all that great, but his tape is good. I think the one thing that shows that connects to that tape is there is some lack of athleticism when it comes to footwork, and like he has good footwork when he's engaged and stuff, but when he has to mirror match, it's a little slow and it drags a little bit, kind of like that heel clicking thing that everyone talks about at the combine. It can get a little bit messy, but everywhere else, like above the waist, and I mean the way he anchors down in the pass game, the way he mauls in the run game, he's just a natural finisher. He plays with that tough mentality, and it's not like that athleticism that you didn't see at the combine. Like you can see he has abilities to mirror match some athletic defenders and match what they're doing and stay in front of them and keep his positioning well. And he displays pretty solid balance overall. So there's not a lot of reasons to be overly concerned about Kenyon Green, but the combine counts. And someone put it in the chat and they said, don't overthink things. Don't use the underwear Olympics as the end all be all, but it is a piece of the puzzle, and he didn't perform all that great there. So I do think it knocks him down a couple of pegs, but I don't know if it knocks him out of early second round contention. I think he is firmly locked in as top 3. And I think that fringe that you put him on, the first round, second round fringe is really perfect for where he's probably going to go.
And, somebody mentioned in the comment section, TP Contend comes in and says, Sean Ryan shut down Kayvon Thibodeau. And someone earlier mentioned Jamari Salyer when he was playing left tackle at Georgia. He shut down Aiden Hutchinson in that college football playoff game. What was the most impressive about that is halfway through the game, Georgia wanted to jumpstart their running game. Once they got a lead, they kicked Jamari Salyer into right guard. I think it was like 2 plays later, James Cook busted off a huge run, or Zamir White busted off a huge run. So, Jamari Salyer was just showing off that versatility. I mean, he is a big old country boy at 6'4", 325 pounds. My concern when we signed Aaron Cromer was that a guy like Jamari Salyer would be too big. But I mean, that guy can move for 6'4", 325. Like I said, his pro day, the reports were he was stiff, but you never want to take sort of what scouts are telling reporters 100%, because they might be trying to get guys to fall down some draft boards as well. So, Dave, what are your thoughts? These 3 guys, Kenyon Green, Sean Ryan, Jamari Salyer, like you had your pick of the litter here. Maybe take Kenyon Green out because Kendall just talked about him. Sean Ryan, Jamari Salyer, like who's your dude there if the Buffalo Bills do decide to go offensive guard in the second round?
Yeah, I mean, I did just quick note on Kenyon Green in my mock draft, my midweek mock draft today. I did trade up in the second round to get him. He fell
Oh,
to
yeah,
pick
you did.
Oh, yeah, look at
46,
that.
and I did
I
take
didn't even
him.
remember that. That was
Yeah, I
subliminal.
forgot
when
that
came
too.
there,
Yeah.
I did take. I just felt like at 46, the value was there. I think in
Yeah,
the
makes
mock,
sense.
I only had to give up like a fifth in our second, which is probably unrealistic anyway. But in any case, I liked that. I liked that value there. As far as Salyer, right? I feel like with the Cromer signing or with the Cromer hire, I look at a guy like Salyer and I say, is he a fit for what the Bills are going to do on offense in the running game, right? Is he going to be a fit in a zone scheme running game? And he's athletic enough to where I think he can be that guy. He can almost be that unicorn that is the maybe heavier guy, but because he's so athletic, he could be that exception to the rule where he comes in and he can maybe be a fit. Obviously, from an archetype standpoint, as Kendall pointed out, he's well over the averages from a weight standpoint.
Mhm.
He's over the averages, but he's under the maximums. Quentin Spain
So
beats him
that's
out in
fair.
a lot of those areas.
That's
So he's
fair.
still within the parameters.
Well, we got rid of Quentin
We
Spain.
know how much
so,
they love Quentin Spain.
But Sean Ryan's interesting to me, right? Left tackle experience at UCLA. We know UCLA ran that spread offense and he handled himself well as a left tackle there. But a lot of outlets are projecting him to slide inside because he's not the lengthiest guy, right? And so he would be that guy that we were talking about before we started going through the players that has that sort of tackle guard flex, in my opinion. Okay, he's not the lengthiest guy, but he has that good experience in a system that likely would benefit him in going to a team like the Bills, right? He played in that spread offense at UCLA. So I like Sean Ryan. I think he's the perfect guy that you could come in and you could say, okay, day one, you're going to slide inside, but if we need you to play tackle in a pinch, we feel like you could be that guy that could slide over and maybe you could be a pure backup left tackle to a guy like Deion Dawkins, right? Like maybe instead of being a swing tackle, you become a left tackle, left guard for us, right? And so I like Sean Ryan's flexibility there. Salyer, obviously, we know you already talked about the versatility there. Like all three of those guys, right? Kenyon Green had the versatility too. So
all three of them,
honestly, if the Bills took any one of those three guys in the second round at pick 57, didn't trade up, and one of those three guys ended up being there at 57 and they were the pick, depending on what they did in the first round, I would be okay with it.
And I think I prefer, as much as I love Jamari Salyer, and I probably would at the end of the day take Jamari Salyer, I just love the idea of like if you draft Sean Ryan, 3 years of experience at left tackle in that Chip Kelly system at UCLA, I can just picture him coming in training camp day one. All right, we're going to run you on the second team at left tackle, and we're going to run you on the third team at left guard.
Love it.
And it's left tackle, left guard, all training camp. Left tackle, left guard, left tackle, left guard. Deion Dawkins gets hurt. You have Sean Ryan who can slide in and play left tackle. You can keep Spencer Brown at right. If Rodger Saffold gets hurt, you can slide him into left guard. So that's sort of what I like about Sean Ryan is I really do think that, I can just picture that left side role for him, that guard tackle flex. Obviously, I think he projects favorably as a starter and throughout his career as that left guard. But we have mentioned at the top of the show, like there is a severe lack of swing tackle capable players on this football team. So that's going to bring us to the third round. And, Claude coming in saying he's shocked I haven't mentioned Cam Jurgens yet. One of my hot takes from this draft season is I think Cam Jurgens is going to go in the first 3 rounds of the draft. Calling my shot now. I think he's the second best center in the draft after Tyler Linderbaum. I think whoever loses out on Linderbaum is going to look to Cam Jurgens. And I think, second, third round is exactly where they're going to end up looking for him. But as we're going through, I've seen the name Tyler Smith a ton in the comment section. We did a show on Monday. Tyler Smith, we talked about because he's probably going to start off at tackle first and then kick inside to guard. So a couple of names that we talked about, I just want to mention that we talked about on Monday. Guys like Tyler Smith, guys like Nicholas Petit-Frere, we mentioned them at length on Monday, and we talked about their ability to kick inside and play guard as well. So we're not going to mention them as much tonight, but we did talk about them at length on Monday. All right, on to my round 3 projections here. And again, looking at the averages, the 3-year average for third round right guards is 4. So I have listed 4 here. Now, obviously, there are some guys in the 4th round. I mentioned Cam Jurgens is a guy I think could surprise some people, maybe go a couple of rounds earlier than people think. And there's a couple other guys like Justin Schaefer, etc., that we're going to get to that could maybe push up into day 2. But for now, these are my 3rd round prospects. Dylan Parham from Memphis, Darian Kennard, who's photographed here from Kentucky. He was a right tackle at Kentucky, but he is going to be shifting in most likely to guard in the pros, even though I've been speaking to some people who are like, some teams might start him at right tackle because he's not as stiff as some people are saying he is. He probably could play right tackle in the pros. Obviously he wouldn't for the BiIls. He would be pretty much immediate competition for Ryan Bates at right guard. You have Ed Ingram from LSU, who was Senior Bowl. The players voted him the offensive lineman of the week at the Senior Bowl. And you have Cole Strange from Tennessee Chattanooga, the small schooler who has impressed people throughout the pre-draft process as well as in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. He's got center guard flex. A lot of people project him as a center in the National Football League. So Parham, Kennard, Ingram, and Strange. Dave, I'm going to start with you. Who tickles your fancy in the 3rd round here?
I like all of these guys, right? But David Arizi here, Cole Strange, I like Cole Strange a lot. He was the 2nd highest RAS of any offensive lineman that got tested, only behind Trevor Penning. He was, according to PFF, the 6th highest rated guard in 2021 per PFF. Obviously, I mentioned the 9.95 RAS. I really like Cole Strange. I think from a archetype perspective, he's a fit, right? I think he's right around that 305 pounds. And again, small school guy. The BiIls aren't averse to necessarily going that route. We saw them go after Spencer Brown last year. Tommy Doyle from Miami of Ohio, obviously not as small as Chattanooga necessarily, but like they're not going to be afraid to go after a super athletic freak in the mid rounds that they feel like can add to this team. The other guy that kind of, I would say, tickles my fancy that I could see as a fit is Ed Ingram, right? I mean, you love his lateral mobility. Again, archetype wise, he's, I think, right around that 310, 315. Probably a good, better fit in a zone scheme than he would be in a man gap scheme. Versatile player, tons of experience at LSU. And is likely to be a guard right at the next level. So another one of those guys that you feel like from a fit perspective makes sense, had the versatility at the college game. And obviously coming from a big time program like LSU, you feel confident that he can come in and kind of hold his own. So kind of like 2 ends of the spectrum there. You have Ed Ingram from the Story program with the versatility. And then you've got a guy in Ed Ingram didn't test as well as Cole Strange, but still not awful. And then Cole Strange with the massive sort of athletic upside. So those are the 2 guys that on that list that stand out. Not taking away from the others because I like them all. But those are the 2 guys that I would stand out and say, like, if I was going to put odds on of the 4, who would be most likely to end up with the BiIls, I'd say those 2.
Yeah, somebody comes in here with a great comment saying Ingram has off-field issues, not a bad player, but I'd rather the BiIls not draft him, to be honest. I've yet to really find out what happened, but Ed Ingram was away from the LSU program for an entire season, but he has since been back, and he's been back for 2 years now. There are some people I've spoken to that said it's not an issue, and then there's someone else I spoke to that said he's off the board completely. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. So, like, if we get to draft day and everyone's like, I love Ed Ingram, and he's on the board in the 7th round, chances are it's probably because some of that off-field stuff, came back to bite him in the butt. I'm not 100% sure what the issue was. I've been doing some digging. I'm not gonna lie to you, it wasn't the most intensive dig, but I haven't found the issue on any of his scouting profiles. Like I haven't Googled like Ed Ingram like arrest or Ed Ingram leaves. I haven't read like an article about it, but I have. Every single scouting report I've read just says, yeah, he was away from the team. It's not a problem. Like that's pretty much what every scouting report I've read said. Like he came back 2 years, no problem. So it'll be interesting because I do know one person who's got him off the board completely that I have spoken to, but other people seem to be fine with that Ed Ingram issue. Looking at arm length, Darian Kennard, 35-inch arms, who big old long arms. Ingram, 33 5/8. Cole Strange, 33-inch arms, and Dylan Parham, 33 1/8 inch arms. Parham's intriguing, man. Lance Zierlein, NFL.com, comps him to Andy Levitri at 6'3", 310 pounds. I think that's a name that a bunch of Bills fans would like to reminisce about back in the day, Andy Levitri. But Kendall, any of these four guys stick out to you the most?
Yeah, Dylan Parham's the one I want to talk about. I actually think you have him a little low in the projections. I feel like he'll
Yeah,
probably end up going in round 2. I
it
think
wouldn't
his
shock me.
tape, I think his tape and his testing combined really speaks well to a lot of teams that are going to want a guy with that kind of range, mobility, flexibility, body control, balance. The way he can mirror match players is just it's really great for someone at that size. He doesn't move like someone who's 310 plus pounds, and that's usually someone you want to be playing guard. And it really just matching him, even Cole Strange. Like Cole Strange is a very similar guy in this regard where he's over 300 pounds, but he doesn't move like it.
Mm.
Matching that with a guy like Rashad White in the backfield and then doing a lot of outside zone type of stuff and someone that can just people move and displace pockets on that outside zone and
Yeah.
open up easy cutback lanes. Like it's just a sight to be seen. And I really want to get some sort of pairing like that in this draft this year. A guy that can move people in zones and a guy that's really comfortable running in zones. So Dylan Parham is someone I really like. I think he could use some work in pass protection. There are times that he struggles a little bit to anchor, but it's not a serious concern where it should drop him lower or anything like that. It's just something he has to work on. It's probably more footwork based than anything, just to keep his base all square and making sure that he's absorbing the proper amount of power from the defender and then pushing it back through the defender. So little things like that. But that's actually my exact problem with Cole Strange. I think he's super competitive, but I think he gets a little bit wide in his base and it makes it difficult for him to anchor down, especially being a bit more on the lighter side. That competitive toughness that he has is typically what keeps him in plays more than anything. And then if he really refines that technique, that dude could be scary at the next level. So yeah, in this round, I would definitely love to have Cole Strange or Dylan Parham.
Yeah, I did some digging on Ed Ingram. Yeah, some pretty scary allegations against him. I guess about 3 or 4 years ago, he was actually indicted by a grand jury on some counts of sexual assault against a minor. But the court case fell through for whatever reasons it was. He returned to LSU. So again, this is one of those things where, you know, if he's sitting there in the 7th round, you're like, how the heck is Ed Ingram still on the board? That's probably the reason why. I really like Cole Strange from Tennessee Chattanooga. I think he's the kind of guy who could come in and, you know, could offer you that guard center versatility. I don't think, especially now with Ryan Bates back, the Buffalo Bills have to rush him into the lineup. He's a guy you can groom behind Mitch Morse, but he also gives you that flex to go out and play guard. So I'm a really big fan of Cole Strange there at the end or in the 3rd round. I think that's the range he's going to end up going. All right, looking at the round 4 board now. This is my favorite round, and it's mostly my favorite round because of the first 2 guys on the list. These are 2 of my favorites in the draft. The first is Luke Fortner from the University of Kentucky. He's got that guard center flex, but he did play center at Kentucky. You got Cam Jurgens, who's pretty much a pure center from the University of Nebraska. You got a guy I'm not so high on, but I know a lot of people are because of how athletic he is. I didn't think he had a very good week at the Senior Bowl, at least at tackle. So maybe life at guard might do him some favors. Spencer Burford from UTSA, Justin Schaefer from the University of Georgia, and Alec Lindstrom, the zone blocking center from BC. So you got 2 zone blocking centers, zone blocking only really centers in Cam Jurgens and Alec Lindstrom, but they're sort of like the Brian Allens of this year's draft. If you're a zone blocking team, rounds like the 4th round, like where the LA Rams went and got Brian Allen a couple of years ago, is where you go out and you get your zone blocking center, right? So some people might be like, whoa, that's a reach. But for a team that is specifically zone blocking who needs a center, you can go out and get a bona fide starter in the 4th round, even though 20 of the 32 teams might not even have those players on their board because of athletic limitations, et cetera. So, you know, Dave, who are some of your favorites there in round 4?
I mean, Luke Fortner is a guy. I mean, the Kentucky offensive line, I mean, you mentioned the connection there. Now it's the second guy we're talking about. Didn't necessarily test great athletically. I think he was like in the 6 to 7 range RAS wise, but this is a guy who played all 3 interior positions throughout his career. He had 600 plus snaps at each of the interior positions throughout his career at Kentucky. So you're talking about extensive experience at all 3 interior positions, and obviously played center most recently in 2021, graded out as the 7th best center per PFF in 2021 of all centers. So I really like Luke Fortner in that range. And I like Cam Jurgens too. This is the athletic freak, right? He had the 9.94 RAS, played center at Nebraska. He actually had a nice jump in his grade from 2020 to 2021 for PFF. He was like a 40 grade in 2020, jumped up all the way up over 70, which is not, it's not, top 10, top 20 type guy, but athletic upside and the progression, right, that you see from 2020 to 2021 leads you to believe that there's maybe something still left in the tank for him to, a ceiling there for him, for a guy like Cam Jurgens. So that's encouraging to me to see that jump he made from 2020 to 2021. And on top of that, the athletic testing was off the charts. Really intrigues me about a guy like Cam Jurgens. And obviously, Nebraska, not exactly known as like what they used to be, but for him to be doing that at that type of program, I think is pretty impressive. I mean, both Nebraska and Kentucky, right, are like not necessarily programs that you are talking about in the same veins as like the Georgias and whatever, but like these are programs that have been like putting guys in the NFL for a long time now, even though they aren't the best of their conferences, they have put guys into the NFL. So I like Jurgens and Fortner both in this. I like your list there.
Yeah, and one of the things that I forgot to mention was I wanted to throw the 5th round prospects up as well. I didn't put them on one graphic just because of like space and everything, but I think that at the end of the day, when it comes to the 4th and the 5th round, it's sort of interchangeable because, like I mentioned, like there were 2 zone blocking specific centers that I had on my 4th round list. So 20 of the 32 teams might not even have those players on their list. So that might bump some of these guys up. Tyrese Robinson, the athletic guard from Oklahoma, Thayer Munford, the former left tackle at Ohio State who kicked into left guard this past season, Lacita Smith from Virginia Tech, who we know the Buffalo Bills have visited Virginia Tech about 5 times this year. Our man, we know that because of Dean Kindig, and we know that the Buffalo Bills have done a lot of homework on a guy like Lacita Smith because our guy Russ Brown asked him at the Senior Bowl, hey, what teams are most interested in you? And Lacita Smith was like, I can't believe how much the Buffalo Bills knew about me. No other team knew as much about me as the Buffalo Bills did. So it seems like a guy like Lacita Smith is someone the Buffalo Bills do their homework on, but we'll get to this in a second, short arms. And then one of my favorites in this draft, I think he's got 3 position, left guard, right guard, center, flex. But again, some people might consider him undersized. One of my favorites in the class, I know, Kendall, you like him as well, Donovan West from Arizona State University. So
I like Donovan West too.
I'm going to throw those guys into the mix as well, Kendall. I'm going to ask you, these 4th round guys, these 5th round guys, who are some of your favorites here? And then Dave, I'll go back to you because obviously I didn't show that 5th round board for you.
That's okay.
I'll be honest with you guys. I'm a bit lower on Luke Fortner than you guys are. I'd put him. I think he's honestly like the lowest one I have graded out of all the guys you've shown on those last 2 graphics. I'm sure that's much to your chagrin, Judge.
Don't go breaking my heart.
I know it's okay. I don't listen to you anyway. You're good.
But no, it's funny because you had Alec Lindstrom at the bottom of that 4th round one, and you had Donovan West at the bottom of the 5th round one. Those are my top 2 guys out of all of the guys that you showed. So
talk about Lindstrom because you know what?
Yeah,
he just, and maybe this is just because the Bills have never really been a zone blocking team. Like I just see his size, and I'm just kind of scared off. So tell me why. Yeah, tell me why I shouldn't be afraid of a guy like Alec Lindstrom, who center only, zone blocking only. Tell me why I shouldn't be afraid of a guy like that.
First thing, anytime you're zone blocking only, that's a lie. There's no chance in hell no one's never pulled in their life. Yeah. So, and I just finished up a Florida State game or a BC game against Florida State where he showed himself pulling a couple of times. Granted, you're right, it doesn't happen a lot, but he did it a couple of times. and boy, does this dude move well. Like he'd be perfect for a zone scheme. And if you're asking him to do pin pull stuff and you want him to be the puller, he's perfectly capable of doing that. I think the size concerns are perfectly fair, but my counter argument to that is everything you mentioned about Ryan Bates. Like, who's to say he can't come in here and add 10 pounds? And furthermore, if he adds 10 pounds, he has athleticism to lose. Like, this dude is very athletic on tape, and he tested very well
The
too.
RAS scores for the IOLs were insane this
They
year.
were really,
Yeah, they
really
were
good.
good.
So a lot of these guys that are undersized, they could gain 10 to 15 pounds and stand to lose some of that athleticism and still play perfectly fine in terms of their athleticism relative to their opponents. So my thing with Lindstrom is just across the board, like there wasn't anything that I was super concerned about. The one thing is the thing I talked about with Cole Strange. There are times that he wasn't anchoring all that well, but it was because his base got too wide. And it just from a physics perspective, you're not going to stop force like that when you're getting too wide with your footwork. But when his footwork was sound and his hand use is pretty solid, when his footwork is sound and his hand use is good, he's stopping people. Like he has the strength to do it even at 296. So I really like Lindstrom's game, especially if we're going to move into more of a zone running scheme.
Yeah.
I guess there are concerns. The same thing with like Linderbaum. There are concerns that, hey, can he even play guard? But the way he was processing stuff on the offensive line and the way he was telling his guys to get into place, the way he was using his eyes to scan in the passing game, everything he did told me that he could.
Yeah.
It's just we haven't seen it yet. I think he has the football intelligence to do it. It's just has he been asked to do it? So I think that's the main thing with him. I unfortunately didn't even look.
No, and that's okay. So it's really funny. So Silas Whittle, apologies for taking so long to get to your super chat, by the way. We do appreciate it. I was in the middle of like showing a graphic and it popped up and then I just sort of lost track of it as I was sort of transitioning. So I do apologize, but he says Justin Schaefer is a mauler. He also falls a lot when trying to block in space, but the effort is there. I'll tell you what, Justin Schaefer is a guy that I've been hearing his name a lot lately. That is a name. I follow a ton of like insiders and stuff on Twitter, scouts, draft Twitter people, insider type people. Like he's a name that's all I have this like list that I just follow on Twitter and I just scroll through the list every day to see what name seems to be the hot trending name of the day or the hot trending name of the week among sort of some of the people on Twitter. And man, Justin Schaefer has been a hot name recently as a guy who has been a lot of people think is slowly working like, oh, he went to Georgia. There's Jamari Salyer. There's James Cook. There's Amir White. There's George Pickens. There's all those defenders. Justin Schaefer sort of goes under the radar. And, you know, one of my favorite sort of draft follows, Luke Carr. I think he had a really good comp for him the other day when he talked about just his balance and his anchor and his ability to just pull out and do those pin and pulls. And he's just really good on some of these pin and pulls and stuff. Compared him to Nate Davis, a guy who I remember a couple of years ago, I think the Buffalo Bills had Nate Davis in for a pre-draft visit, or we certainly talked about Nate Davis a ton a couple of years ago. He ended up being drafted by the Tennessee Titans. So I think a guy like Justin Schaefer could work his way. I don't want to say he's a day 3 or a day 2 pick, but I think he's a guy who can go like early round 4 and it wouldn't shock me at all. I'm a huge fan of Justin Schaefer. And he's one of those guys who like over the process, you know how we talk about Brian Robinson, every time we do a ranking, he just sort of, every time you watch a little bit more film, read a couple more scouting reports, he just keeps working his way up and up and up and up. That's Justin Schaefer for me. He's a dude who has worked his way up, you know, these boards the last couple of weeks. Just the more I get to watch him and the more I get to read scouting reports on him and things of that nature, just keeping the ear to the ground, the things I've been hearing about him. Dave, I'm going to put this round 5 projection board back up. Tyrese Robinson, Thayer Munford, Lacita Smith, Donovan West. Any of these guys wet your whistle here in the if that's a phrase that's your phrase. I'm going to use it for you. Is there anyone here that wets your whistle here in the 4th or the 5th round?
Kind of all of them and kind of none of them at the same time. I mean, that's
the definition of the 4th and the 5th round.
I like Donovan West. Right? I mean, full interior offensive line flexibility. He's played a ton of games. I think he started since he was a freshman at Arizona State. You know, I like that he's got sort of that flexibility. Didn't necessarily test well athletically, but he is a former wrestler, so that's got to count for something.
That's massive.
That's massive. And my notes here basically say that like what is going to be his quote home position, right? When he gets to the NFL. Like he's got that interior offensive line flexibility. Obviously, we know he played center some, but like, is he going to be a guard as his primary position at the next level? Is he going to be a center? I don't know, right? You would kind of look at the size and you'd say, based on the size, maybe he's going to end up being a center, right? At the next level. I don't know, right? What his primary position is going to be. But I do like a guy in the 5th round that has center guard flex. There's value to that. And that's why a guy like you were just mentioning, Justin Schaefer, doesn't do it for me as much because he really doesn't have any position flex, but to each their own, right? Lasita Smith, obviously we've talked about him a lot. Russ Brown has talked about him a lot. Another late round utility kind of depth piece, right? So I think that he's probably likely going to be a left guard is what it seems like, which is fine because that's kind of what we assume is going to be the whole left on this offensive line when Saffold leaves, unless the Bills kind of move Bates back to left guard afterwards. But you like the athleticism there as a developmental type, like a pseudo ball of clay, if you will. But Donovan West to me is the name that kind of stands out as far as like, okay, he could play center, could play guard. He's got a lot of experience, and he blocked for our guy Rashad White. So, like that's why I kind of say I like them all, but I don't really like any of them. I don't know. Like you're right. It's the 5th round in a nutshell. It's like that right at that point in the draft where you're like, do we use draft capital on a guy like this, or do we just wait and just sign a guy like late or draft the 7th rounder? So West would probably be the guy in that group that I'd be most excited about if the Bills went after him.
And I'll tell you what, we talk about guys who rise up during the draft process. This seems to be a guy who's like sliding down because I feel like in November, I was talking about this guy as like a 2nd round prospect. That's Thayer Munford Jr. from Ohio State. I think, a couple of things. Number one, I think one thing, first of all, the Buffalo Bills, they scout the hell out of Ohio State. Like they've sent scouts up the wazoo. I think Columbus is close to Buffalo. That might have something to do with it, but they're also just a flagship program. And you see the prospects that they pump out year after year after year. Buffalo makes it a point to go out there and, go and scout those Ohio State guys. But this is a guy who was his left tackle for 2 years at Ohio State. He was the left tackle at one of the premier college football teams, in the nation. And he made a conscious decision this past offseason. It wasn't the coaches who approached him. It was him who approached the coaches. And he said, listen, there's this guy playing right tackle right now named Nicholas Petit-Frere. I think you should kick him over to left tackle. I will willingly slide into left guard and ding my draft stock because I think it's best for this football team if we can create that wall on the left-hand side with me and Nicholas Petit-Frere at left tackle and me at left guard. So Thayer Munford went to the coaches and sacrificed playing a premium position for a premium team in his last year of college eligibility. That's something that will stick out to the Buffalo Bills, and they'll look at that as sort of a team player type of move. Yeah. I mentioned earlier with Sean Ryan, you have that, you draft a guy and you got, all right, Thayer Munford, you're going to come in, you're going to take 2nd team left tackle snaps and 3rd team left guard snaps, and we're going to groom you at both. And if Deion Dawkins gets hurt, you can play left tackle in a pinch. If Rodger Saffold gets hurt, you can play left guard in a pinch, and your pro position is likely left guard. Now, Thayer Munford, you're not going to confuse this guy with a guy who's going to go out there and he's going to maul you, or this guy who's going to do the pin and pulls and things like that. But when it comes to pass protection and things like that, Thayer Munford played over 1,600 snaps in his college career. He allowed 6 sacks. I mean, this guy was very good in pass protection in his time at Ohio State University. Like I said, not exactly a mauler in the run game. And that's probably why he's going to be sitting there in the fifth round for you to grab. But he's a pretty darn good pass protector out there at left guard. So you could do a heck of a lot worse than a Thayer Munford. And if he's sitting there in the 5th round, I mean, that's an absolute bargain with the tackle guard flexibility that he has. But again, he does have his downside there. Lasita Smith and his short arms, Kendall, is that a concern to you?
I mean, to an extent, but he's also a day 3 pick. So like, are you
Yeah.
really going to take someone off your board when you know day 3 picks they're going to have flaws?
Mhm.
He has the same arm length that Jack Anderson had last year, and the Bills drafted him. Obviously, he got poached and all that stuff, but the tape spoke enough for the Bills to go get Jack Anderson. I think Lascivious Smith's tape is far better than Jack Anderson's.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing. It's like when you're looking at a guy on day 3, you really want to use the tape more than anything. If there's a measurable that's off, that's probably to be expected. You're kind of just looking for enough boxes to be checked. And the film is the most important box when it comes to a day 3 guy. And then you start going down the rabbit hole. Okay, does he meet certain thresholds for our archetype? And he fits within the minimum for what Brandon Beane has either traded for, drafted, or signed in free agency. So that personally doesn't concern me. The way he moves people in the run game, zone and gap, it's really impressive. He has some weird like robotic footwork when he's pulling, but he gets to the spot in plenty of time. He shows good enough range to get there. He's good at climbing to the second level and finding a good aiming point on those linebackers, stuff like that. The thing that I love most about Lascivious Smith is his balance and body control, because there are times that he really struggles to anchor, and that definitely could have to do with that arm length. If the defensive man has longer arms, he's got more of that force on his chest plate than Smith does on the defender. So that is a concern. But the way that Smith keeps his body balanced and the way he uses the strong lower half of his body allows him to anchor better than someone with equally short arms. So I think there are ways to mitigate that risk, and Lascivious Smith does that. So there are concerns for sure, but that's why he's probably going to be a 5th round pick. But I think he's a good lottery pick. You know what I mean? Like he's that guy that you're taking a chance on. It's a 5th round pick. I'm going to throw in my lottery ticket and I'm going to take my chance on Lascivious Smith. I like my chances on getting a pretty solid return for 5th round on Lascivious Smith.
Do you think he is left guard only, or do you think he's got like right guard flex? Could he play a little center? Like, what are your thoughts on Lascivious Smith?
I personally don't ever disclude someone from being like a left guard and a right guard. If someone's more comfortable on the left, like so be it. But I don't want to say they can't do it on the right. I think that's foolish unless the player like literally can't kick step to one side. If like he has a bum knee and he's like, every time I kick slide to my right knee.
Was that like Cyrus Quanjo back in the day could only play left? He couldn't play right.
Exactly. Like if it's something like that, then it's like, oh wow, we have a serious concern here. He can only play on this side.
Guy maybe more hyped that we wanted to do?
Like Reggie Ragland. Fuck Bama.
The Alabama boys. But no, with Smith, the concern is definitely center. I have no idea if he could do center. But it's kind of the same thing with Zion Johnson. Like we didn't know, but he tried it. So now we're all confident that he has like the competitive fortitude to go ahead and try and do it. So that's kind of the boat with Lascivious Smith going to center. But I wouldn't put past the idea that he could play left or right guard.
Peter DiBiase coming to the super chat. Always appreciate you, Peter. We've had him on the show before. We'll have him on the show again. He says, thoughts on Lascivious Smith, Alex Lindstrom, and Ed Ingram. Well, lucky for you, we just got done breaking down Lascivious Smith. And
Smith was the last one.
If you rewind the tape a little bit, Kendall super high on Alec Lindstrom. And we had a great conversation on Ed Ingram as well. One of the concerns with Ed Ingram is he has a arrest, a grand jury conviction, but not a trial conviction for some sexual assault charges at LSU a couple of years ago. So he's one of those guys where we like him as a player. Like he was voted Senior Bowl Offensive Lineman of the Week. But if he's a guy who's sliding down the draft boards, that's going to be the reason why Ed Ingram slides down the draft board. So thank you, Peter, for that. If you want Kendall's full thoughts as he broke them down, just rewind it a little bit. And we'll also timestamp this when the show is over for you as well. And not just for you, for everyone. We do it for everyone. We're not just doing it for you, Peter. We appreciate you, but we're doing it for everyone. So that brings us now to the 6th and the 7th round. And I've combined it all. And there's even a ton of UDFA prospects I like. This interior offensive line class is like 40 deep, man. Kendall's gonna have a full beard by the time he's done scouting all these interior offensive linemen.
Right. Good.
He's been growing it for 2 years.
Everyone's favorite. A guy that Joe Marino is very high on from Wake Forest, comped him to Ryan Bates, Wake Forest left tackle, and he's also played center. Zach Tom. Michigan's Andrew Stuber, who had a really good Senior Bowl. He's also just sort of like not the most athletic dude in the world. I think he's right guard only, I believe it or not. Like, I just don't know if he's got the athleticism to play anything else. Jatir Carter, who's an athlete from Southern that I really, really like. Aaron Quinn's favorite, Chris Paul from Tulsa, a guy who's got 4-position flex. He played four positions in his time at Tulsa. You got Marquise Hayes from Oklahoma, who I know you guys have already done a film room on. So
Yeah.
Marquise Hayes is a guy that you got some you've done some work on. A lot of people have comped him to Quentin Spain, that type of player. A guy that you did some work on today who's always been a favorite of mine. I think this guy's got some potential. Ben Brown from Ole Miss. I'm going to want your thoughts on him in a little bit.
Sure.
Cade Mays, the right tackle from Tennessee, who's going to kick inside. Logan Bruce from Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin is another one of those Big Ten programs. I think that a guy like Aaron Cromer might have some love for. Joshua Azidu from North Carolina. Dawson
I like him.
Azidu?
I do.
All right, we'll have a conversation about him too. Dawson Deaton from Texas Tech, who is very much a center only. I was watching one of the Christopher Passo's TikToks on him the other day. He's got like a really weird way he holds the football before he snaps it, but it works for him. Dawson Deaton. And then one of my favorite prospects in the entirety of this draft. He had a great Shrine Bowl week. He had a really good RAS score, pushing like a 9+. He played center at Washington. He played left guard during the Shrine week and had a really good week at left guard during Shrine week. Luke Wattenberg from the University of Washington. The Buffalo Bills draft him. I will be a happy man. I fall in love with late round draft picks far too often. Luke Wattenberg and Malcolm Rodriguez are my offensive and defensive guys this year that are just like 7th round UDFA fodder that I just love. And
yeah, I've noticed they're kind of mainstays. They're mainstays in your mock drafts. Just like every single one, you got 6th, 7th round of Rodriguez and Wattenberg almost every time.
I can't quit them. Now here's the interesting thing. The numbers would suggest, my other computer died, so I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the numbers would suggest not a ton of offensive linemen are going to be drafted late. Interior offensive linemen, like guards, technically slip into the UDFA category. So
I think Bill Dunkel on that list.
He's on the next list. Don't worry, but it's a lot of these guys could slide to UDFA status because. But this is, on the other hand, this also is a really deep IOL class. I really think this is a really deep IOL class. So I think this is going to be a situation where I think more guys will get drafted than the average. So, Dave, I'm going to start with you. You see some names on that list. Anyone stick out to you?
Yeah, I like Wattenberg, right? Let's see the notes I have on him. 9.58 RAS. So you like that guard center flex, which you talked about at the beginning of the show, Steve. So if you're going to go, one route or the other, you're going to have like the tackle guard flex, or you like that guard center flex. I kind of feel like he could be like a poor man's Creed Humphrey. I don't know. Like he's obviously not to the level of Creed Humphrey, but like you like his tenacity and his effort in the run game, especially for someone who's a little bit on the smaller side, right? And so, I mean, smaller side if you start talking about guard, right? But if as a center, size is not really too bad of an issue there. Dawson Deaton was an interesting one. Like you mentioned, he tested really well athletically. He was almost like a 9.7 RAS, 35 starts across his career at Texas Tech, was the 16th ranked center per PFF in 2020. But then he dropped in 2021. So you wonder if if that regression is something that was kind of a one-off, or I know he missed a couple of games for injury as well last year, but it was only 2 games, I think. So, and again, center only, how much value is there going to be for someone like that at the end of the draft? Because it's center to me is weird. I kept thinking about this. I'm like, on one hand, it's like super valuable, but on the other hand, a team has to need that for you to get drafted. So if the team needs it, it's like the value goes 180, I feel like, for centers. But in any case, I like both of those guys. Can you pull up that list again? Because
there's a lot of names, man.
It's a lengthy list.
Okay. Zach Tom, I like. Obviously, played left tackle and center, which is an interesting combo in college, but likely to play maybe guard at the next level. So if you feel like he's going to play guard at the next level, you almost have a full, maybe left side of your line versatility, if you will, if you think he can do that. I like Ben Brown too. I'll let Kendall talk about him because I know he was doing some tape on him today. But I would say Wattenberg is intriguing to me. Carter's intriguing as an athlete and as a prospect. Stuber, I wasn't as big on him. I'm probably not as big on Mays either as some other people. But that's just my personal opinion. I would say Wattenberg, Tom, and Carter to me maybe are the three guys just based on profile that you could see getting drafted.
Kendall, how about you? I want you to talk a little bit, speak to the two guys here. Start with Ben Brown. I really like you to talk about Ben Brown a little bit, and then talk about Joshua Ezeudu a little bit from North Carolina as well, because he's one where I saw he got the combine invite. I read a couple of scouting reports, but he's not someone I've done a ton of work on yet from North Carolina, but he blocked for Ty Chandler, so he must be
Yeah, exactly. Right. All right. So I'll start with Ben Brown. The thing with Ben Brown is he's one of these guys that deserves to be at the back end of the draft. That being said, he could be a steal at the back end. He does a lot of things. Like, the way I grade is I grade on like a 0 to 9 scale for just about every trait. And he was someone who fell in between the numbers 5 and 6, which is sufficient and good with just about everything. And on top of that, I put like 5.5s in there, and that's what I consider solid. And he was in between 5.5 and 6 on a lot of areas. So he's between solid and good in a lot of areas for me. The thing with him is just he gets the job done, and he just needs to work on technique and finding consistency to that technique, because he has the size, he has the length, and he has the strength. He shows grip strength to sustain blocks all the time. When you have grip strength and length, that's a great combination to sustain your blocks. And I watched him against Alabama, and I saw real power in there because he was getting in there and getting scrappy with Phil Mathis. And we know Phil Mathis is a deal. He is a tough guy to deal with on the interior. Yeah, great last name, right? But yeah, so that was obviously impressive. Seeing him anchor down Phil Mathis was definitely big. The biggest concerns I have with him is quickness out of the stance. I don't expect him to test all that well. I don't think we have his pro day numbers. I'm not even sure if he did his stuff at his pro day. And inconsistent hand placement, range, and flexibility. So the range and flexibility stuff and like that quickness out of the stance, that's not necessarily stuff you're going to bet on getting better at the next level. It's more the inconsistent hand placement. It's the footwork. It's the technical stuff where when all of his technical stuff is right, he wins. Like, he wins every time when he's getting at least more of the technical things right than he's getting wrong per play. And that's a big key on these late round guys. You're not really betting on them to be perfectly technical with all of everything in each rep, but you want to see if they can win without that technique and how they win when they have that technique, and then just fine tuning it. And then lastly, he liked my film cut up of him, and I DM'd him, and he said the BiIls met him at the combine. Nothing serious, but they talked to him.
Ben Brown?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Little news there.
Yeah, I do some stuff behind the scenes. It's that time of year, man. You post clips of people, everyone's searching their name.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of Isaiah McKenzie.
Oh yeah. And then also Josh Ezeudu. So
I pronounced his name wrong, but all right.
I might have gotten it wrong. Who knows?
When we draft him, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I know, right? We'll figure it out when we get there. The thing with him is guard, tackle, flex. That's the appealing part to him. The toughest part for me when evaluating him was I saw some good stuff
Those
at guard. Hey, come on, man. We can't show that bias on this show.
Oh, I can show it.
So the toughest part for me was projecting his stuff to guard, because I saw him at guard and I liked what he was doing at guard, but there were a lot of things that I was seeing him do at tackle, and I was like, wow, this dude's really athletic. And the reason I looked at him was because of his RAS score. Let me pull it up. I'm pretty sure it was in the 9s. This dude has and it's for whatever reason the link is gone. I'm pretty sure it was
9.13.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
So, and I'm pretty sure that's also for tackle. And if you switch his position to guard, it's like above 9.5. So
Mhm.
that's when I was like, okay, I got to look into this dude. And I watched him, and he's clearly athletic enough, big enough, and long enough to play tackle. And you can see he anchors down those edges, and he mirror matches with those guys really well. So you see he has the athleticism. And then on top of that, he's just a good mover. Like the way he moves in the run game and the way he displaces people with his strength and how he operates in zone, it's very fluid. You can tell he has a fluidness to his game, especially for someone being that big. You don't really expect them to be all that fluid. So that was a really nice thing for him. But the toughest thing, I got to go back to it, is extrapolating him to guard, because when he was anchoring down edges, it was solid. It was really solid. But anchoring down those defensive tackles, that's a different amount of strength you're blocking. You know, like when you block an edge guy, that's 250 pounds, maybe 260 pounds coming at you with speed and momentum. When you got a guy that's 290, 300 coming at you, you really got to anchor down, because I mean, it's just a different amount of power that's coming at you. So that's my biggest problem with Josh Ezeudu. It's how is he going to transition into guard? Is he more comfortable at guard, or is he more comfortable at tackle? And can he truly anchor defensive tackles? But his body of work is very intriguing, and especially checks that box for guard tackle flex. So I'm intrigued. And he blocked for Ty Chandler, like you said. So that means something.
Yeah, I'm just looking over this list one more time. A couple of people by chance said, Zach Tom should be higher on the list. He's one of those guys who I think could end up ultimately, going higher than people expect. But also, at the end of the day, he's got a lot of versatility. We talked the same way about Zach Tom, the way a lot of people talked about Ryan Bates. Ryan Bates went undrafted. So even though Zach Tom can do a lot of things and do a lot of things well, at the end of the day, a lot of teams might just project him as a backup. Many teams might not see him as a starter, and that could slide him into that 6th, 7th round range, which I had him. And the other thing is Jessica Tennis came in earlier and she said, like, what's the point of drafting a 6th, 7th round guy? You're just going to try to put him on the practice squad like Jack Anderson. You run the risk of losing him. Jack Anderson, we probably would have made the team if he was on the roster right now. He would probably make the team in 2023. You look at it like Jamil Douglas, Forrest Lamp, John Feliciano, Darrell Williams, all of these veteran names that were sort of in training camp last year aren't on the roster right now. Now, we still have plenty of time. Like Forrest Lamp is sitting out there on the street, I think, right now. And there are plenty of Forrest Lamps of the world out there right now. So, at the end of the day, could a 6th or 7th rounder have to, get cut and go to the practice squad or run the risk of losing them? Yes. But I do think a 6th, 7th round offensive lineman, especially in this class with some of the guys that they have, Lamp re-signed with the Saints. So there's another Forrest Lamp out there somewhere for us. But I do think they have a better chance of making the football team this year. But if you're not willing to run the risk, some of these guys are going to go undrafted. Just to be real here, like some of these guys aren't going to get drafted. It would not be a shock to me if some of these guys do end up as UDFAs. Like I said, my computer died. My other computer died, but you run the averages. It's not this. This list is way longer than the average combined 6th and 7th round prospects that are drafted every year. It is a little bit of a deeper class, but I left some room to spare here just because of, the differences in scheme, et cetera. Some of these guys are center only, et cetera, sort of the variations of the board. So I put an extra amount of names. Some of these guys are likely going to go undrafted. And then that leads us to our final list of possible undrafted free agents. And there are some dudes on this list. There are multiple combine invites on this list. You got our guy, Bill Dunkel from San Diego State, who I think is too much of a ball of clay to draft, but he's a guy to look at as a UDFA. Andrew Rupsich, I talked about how he had a really good NFLPA game. He's another guy who razzed in the 9s from California Stockton. Like he's a small school guy you can get as a UDFA, ball of clay. Another guy from San Diego State, Zachary Thomas. Hayden Howerton is a sort of a center-only prospect. Chasen Hines, the big guy from LSU. Blaze Andrews from Minnesota. Marcus McKeithen, who also played on that UNC offensive line. James Empey from BYU, who was a pretty good center there at BYU. was considered by many a middle round draft prospect, but some injuries have sort of derailed him. Chris Owens from Alabama, Brock Hoffman from Virginia Tech, who the Buffalo Bills have scouted a number of times at school. Nick Ford from Utah, who, Kendall, I know you've done some work on. Stuart Reese, Ben Petrula, Sham Schluter. My favorite of this list, Xavier Newman-Johnson from Baylor, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit. A guy who I feel like has been in college for 20 years, Doug Kramer, the center from Illinois. Josh Revis, the big boy from Kansas State. Josh Sills, the West Virginia transfer who played a year at Oklahoma State. And then some zone blocking centers, guys like Liam Shanahan, Matt Allen, Caden Madden, Cole Schneider, Paul Groton. I mean, ton of guys who are going to go undrafted, where it wouldn't surprise me if they latch onto some rosters in the National Football League. You know, Peter DiBiase coming in saying like, hey, you know, Brock Hoffman's an absolute man. Always loved the Hokies. Jason Hines comes in and says, Jason Hines could be a sleeper like Inka Bakwanu. Jason Taylor says you can't draft another guy named Ford, or there is another guy available. Usually it's
knew that was going to happen, man.
No, I dig it. He didn't say that. I just sort of read it that way because that's what I thought it said, and then I actually read it.
Now it's going to happen double.
But Dave, any names stick out to you on this list here?
Well, I'm only going to talk about the ones I actually have notes for because I don't want to talk out of my ass.
Pick your favorites. Yeah, just pick your favorites.
So I like MP. Is that how you say his name?
Mm-hmm.
From BYU. He's the son of a coach. TDN has him projected to play as a center in a spread-heavy zone scheme with lots of RPOs.
Zach Wilson center.
So it seems like that's a fit for me. So maybe a UDFA center option for the Bills that could land on the practice squad. The age obviously is going to scare people away because he went on that mission as part of the LDS church, right? To go to, I think he went to Portugal or somewhere, but in any case, and his ceiling isn't incredibly high, obviously, right? And he's got the age, so probably not going to get drafted, but a decent, option as a zone really specific center. I did have Newman Johnson on my list, but I'll let you talk about him. And Doug Kramer, right? Pretty rangy as a zone sort of blocking center, can get up to the next level based on some of the scouting reports, continue his blocking assignments. Again, a guy that'll fit in a zone heavy scheme. Feels like a good kind of guy that you could have on your practice squad as a center who would be a fit for your roster, right? Probably not going to get drafted, but yeah. And then the only other guy I had some notes on were actually, no, they were on the 6th, 7th round list. You had Bruce on Logan Bruce on your 6th, 7th round list, right? So he wasn't even on this list for me.
Yeah, I mean, he could easily make his way to UDFA.
Exactly. Petrula gets mentioned a lot. I'm not as high on him as some other people. Jason Hines, we've talked about him already. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of looking at, for priority free agents, I was mainly looking at centers like that could really be practice squad guys, because
that makes sense.
In reality, you're going to be able to find a guard. You're going to be able to even tackles you could probably find, but centers that will fit for the Bills. And again, it's an interesting dynamic with center, right? You want to find the right guy that fits your system. And if you're the Bills, you're not especially deep at the position anymore, right? Like John Feliciano's gone. Ryan Bates is now a starter, right? So for whatever you thought about him as a potential backup center, he's really a starter for you now based on what you're going to pay him. And the Bills don't really have that center in waiting or developmental type guy. So that's kind of who I was focused on in this area.
Yeah, my guy here late, I really like Xavier Newman-Johnson. He's on the shorter side at 6'2", but he's short. He's a wide-bodied blocker. He's really strong on the line. He's effective, sort of like on the move. He's got 3 position versatility at left guard, right guard, and center in that Baylor system. Just sort of like a dancing bear. And he played for Dave Aranda, which is a coach that has a connection to Sean McDermott. So, maybe not enough of a connection to draft him, but enough of a connection to get him here as a, sort of priority free agent when the draft is over. I'm really, really high on Xavier Newman-Johnson. I put him as a UDFA, but it honestly wouldn't surprise me if somebody took a chance on him, in the 6th or 7th round of the draft. But like I said, it's just such a deep class for interior offensive linemen that he didn't really make the list there. Kendall. Nick Ford is a guy that I've always liked. I like, me, I like Utah players.
Yes.
I've been burned before. But I really do like Nick Ford. Again, another guy with 3 position flex. And now we got, so apologies, we got some more spam in the comment section. But another guy with 3 position flex. He's played left guard, right guard, and center at his time at Utah. Talk a little bit about Nick Ford. People will be afraid by the name, but maybe they shouldn't be.
Scout the film, people. Don't scout the helmet or the nameplate. My thing with Nick Ford is he's got the size, he's got the mauling tenacity about him to fit into this team. And that the idea that he's played all 3 of those interior positions is very intriguing. Honestly, I felt like he probably could have played tackle if he was just a hair more athletic. The size and the length he has, like, it wouldn't have shocked me. Like, he's just a big dude. He towers over everyone on that offensive line for the Utes. But he played center for them most of the season. He was doing a great job, like, processing and calling out everything on the defensive front and telling everyone else where they needed to be. He was pretty good on those combo blocks, but working into the second level with a solid aiming point, all of that kind of stuff. He's very sound all around. But the thing I keep coming back to is just the way he finishes blocks. Like, the way he displaces people in the run game, the way he moves people with just an effortless fashion. He just has so much natural power to his game. If the technical side starts to get shored up, this dude could be a steal. Like, I really like him. I think he's one of those guys that should be taken in the 6th or the 7th round. But like you said, all of these guys, 6th and beyond, they absolutely could be UDFAs, because at this point, you're looking for what fits your team, what has the best chance to make your roster. And like Tilt said, maybe it's a center that has the best chance to make the Bills roster. Maybe the Eagles, they don't need a center for the best chance to make their roster. The Texans, maybe they need a guard for the best chance to make their roster. So it pushes some of these guys lower than they maybe should be based on what the tape portrays. But when I watch the tape, man, I really like Nick Ford, just the way he's so tenacious in the run game, and he's always trying to finish blocks, and he's just really competitive, and you can see it in every single rep he has. It's really just going to come down to the technical side of things. And when you have Aaron Cromer, a player like that really intrigues me. Someone that could use more refinement on the technical side of things, but has all the power and the traits within that to excel. So it's just going to come with coaching. So that's why I'm into Nick Ford, but I wouldn't expect anything earlier than round 6 for Nick Ford.
All right. So, gentlemen, any final thoughts? Any sort of like offensive line takes that we want to get off our chest before we head out of here this evening? We're almost at the 2-hour mark, so I think we'll hold off on the mock drafts again until maybe we'll do mock draft Mondays and only do mock drafts on Mondays. But any final thoughts on the offensive line here, Dave? Any final parting thoughts?
I mean,
how about this? What round would you prefer to take a offensive lineman in? Like, maybe think like round fit. Like, what player, what round would be like your ideal draft pick for the Buffalo Bills?
I like that.
Round and fit. Oh man, that's a good question. Round 1, Zion Johnson.
Ooh.
I really like Zion. I mean, look, and the reason I say that is this, right? The Bills are at a point right now where their offensive line, where their starters look good, but if you peek behind the curtain, it doesn't look so good. And if one guy goes down, it's really going to have a ripple effect, I think, on this entire unit. And I'd like to be in a situation where I have my 5 guys set for at least a couple years that I know they're going to be the guys. And I know that's easier said than done, but the Bills have a chance to make that happen in this draft if they choose to do that, right? They have a chance to, if they draft an interior offensive lineman early, and it could be Kenyon Green in the second round, right? It could be Sean Ryan in the second round. That might be an option for me. You potentially have the 5 guy set at least for 2 more years, right? Beyond 2022, for 23 and 24, while Mitch Morse is still here, Dawkins still under contract, and you have a chance for the starting 5 to be the same for at least a couple years. I'll take that, right? I will take that, and I don't mind making like an early round investment to do that, especially for an elite guy like Zion.
Kendall, how about you? What round player? Like, what do you think is the best fit for the Buffalo Bills?
Well, I'm kind of in this position where I'd really like the Bills to draft, not necessarily in an order, but I'd like them to draft cornerback, wide receiver, interior offensive lineman, and running back in the first 4 rounds.
Yeah.
And the way I'm kind of looking at it is, I think those first 2 rounds, I'd prefer it to be a combination of wide receiver and cornerback. But I'm glad you said what you said, Tilt, because I'm very much with you on the idea that, like, hey, if Zion Johnson or Tyler Linderbaum, whoever it is, if an elite guy on the interior falls to 25, we should not just discount that and take that off the table. I'm glad you said that. But I think that's where I am right now, where, God,
I mean, look, if Olave's there 25 and Zion Johnson's there, like, I think we're all going to want Olave, right? Like, it's just a shiny toy.
Of course.
But like, because these interior offensive linemen, especially, they're not flashy picks, right?
No.
They're just not. But at the end of the first round, the flash isn't as important, right? Because it's the end of the first round.
It's about making sure you hit on the guy, making sure that you like the guy more rather than pleasing the fan base and stuff like that. That's what first overall picks are for, pleasing the fan base, as draft day showed us. Anyways, I think I'm kind of zeroing in on rounds 3 and 4, interchangeable with running back and interior offensive linemen. It's all fluid, but I think round 4 is where I would go. And the players specifically, it's probably Donovan West or Alec Lindstrom, both guys on the smaller side of things, but I think they fit what we want to start doing in the run game, that zone heavier style of running. Guys that obviously have played center, so that's great moving forward, knowing that these guys can play center. Obviously, I don't have a lot of insight into what Alex Lindstrom can do at the guard position, but I like what he can do from center, and I think we can extrapolate and project that to guard. So I think those 2 guys, they're neck and neck for me. I have them very, very close together on my spreadsheet. So I like those 2 guys, and I'd love pairing them with a running back that we draft in the 3rd round with either Donovan West or Alec Lindstrom in the 4th round. I think it would be great for this zone running scheme.
I'm going to go with this. I really like the depth of the offensive line this year in the draft. I think that, especially now, I like the Bills. I have a lot of faith in Aaron Kromer. I think a lot of people here at Cover One have a lot of faith in what Aaron Kromer wants to do. Yep. So I'm actually going to double up, and I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to go 2 rounds. I'm going to go 2 players, 2 rounds. But it's not technically cheating because I'm waiting till later. So I think Luke Fortner in the 4th round. Give me that guard center flex with Luke Fortner out of Kentucky in the 4th round, and then double it up in the 5th round. Give me Thayer Munford, Ohio State. Give me that tackle guard flex. So you're getting guard center flex in Fortner. You're getting tackle guard flex in Thayer Munford. They're not the sexiest pick in the world, but they insanely help the depth. I think these are 2 guys who, if needed to, can start this year in a pinch if players get hurt. And there are also guys that can develop into future starters on this football team. So I think you're getting versatility. You're getting immediate depth pieces who could contribute if asked. And you are getting potential guys who you can groom into future starters. So give me Fortner in round 4 and give me Thayer Munford in round 5.
I'd be okay with that.
I like that. I like
that's
that.
That's my new favorite thing. So like, Aaron Quinn posted a mock draft today on Twitter, and I was so mad at him because I had done this mock like 6 times and I never posted it, where I doubled up in the 3rd and the 4th round on corners, and I was taking Cam Taylor-Britt in the 3rd round, and I was taking Kobe Bryant in the 4th because he's got that. They both got that corner safety flex, and they can play nickel too. And I was just like, they're just such perfect like little chess pieces that we can just have a whole variety of smorgasbord of DBs back there to choose from. But I just never ended up posting any of those mocks. And then Aaron Quinn posted that mock today, and it's just like there's just always something about a double up, right? I guess maybe Bills fans are a little jaded with the double up after last year.
I certainly am.
There's definitely something to a double up where you see two guys in a row and you're like, damn. And in this case, in the other case with Tam Taylor Britt and with Kobe Bryant, I was super impressed. And then in this case with Luke Fortner and Thayer Munford, I think that those guys just add that versatility to the line that would really be beneficial to the Buffalo Bills. All right. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the 2-hour mark. It's the end for us. I have to go through and edit this now and cut some time out because I think our podcasts are even limited to 2 hours when I go and I clip this audio. So I'm going to have to, I don't know, guys. I have to find like a minute and a half to cut. I don't even know where I'm going to cut from. I have no idea what I'm going to cut. Probably all the times I say I'll just cut all the times I say and it'll take about 6 minutes off the
yeah, you'll take like 2 hours just trying to cut them.
So ladies and gentlemen, if you're still with us, thank you so much. Super appreciate it. Smash that like button on your way out. Share with anyone you think might enjoy this Air Raid Hour experience. Come join us in the comment sections and let's get ready for this draft, which is exactly 30 days away. If you are watching on demand, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. We do our best to come on in over the course of the week and comment to whatever comments that you guys leave, whether it's a question, a comment, a take, etc. We do our best to come in and respond to anyone who leaves a comment in the comment section. Smash that like as well if you're listening on demand. And if you are listening in audio form, podcasting form, whether it's on Spotify, etc., Apple Podcasts, leave us a nice little 5-star and a review. Always appreciated. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I scrolled Twitter. Nothing happened while we were gone. There was a cool Photoshop of Andrew Booth Jr. in a Bills uniform. I retweeted it.
See that was nice.
Oh, you guys tweet during the show too?
No, not during
I saw
the
it
show.
before. I saw it before the show.
Was he's wearing number 1, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah. So anyways, nothing crazy happened while we were here. So no need to fear. People were talking smack about UNC earlier. I'm like, dang it, is there a game on right now? But then I realized the games aren't until Saturday, so we don't have to worry about that. We will see you on Monday. Don't forget the Going Deep podcast tomorrow night. And we'll be back on Monday. And listen, every time we do a Monday show, something crazy happens over the weekend. Yeah. We got some. So we're just like a good luck charm. Something good happens for the Buffalo Bills, and we're here to talk about it on Monday. So we'll be back on Monday at the same exact time, 9 p.m. Eastern. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Are we having fun yet?